Every photograph feels like truth, but in colonial archives, truth was twisted to fit domination. Did you know entire populations were photographed not as people, but as inventory? These images weren't captured for memory. They were forced, staged, and sanctioned as part of control. Over the next 8 examples, we'll reveal what hides in plain sight. Portraits designed to silence the subjects while celebrating their subjugation. These aren't just photos. They're evidence of a system that weaponized visibility itself. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1. The severed hands of the Congo. This image captures a child holding the severed hands of another victim, positioned as if presenting evidence. The camera did not record rescue or aid, but instead a grim form of colonial bookkeeping. Each hand symbolized a bullet spent, a life reduced to a tally mark on a ledger. Under the rule of King Leopold's system, soldiers were ordered to account for every cartridge used. Hands became proof that ammunition wasn't wasted on hunting or spared in sympathy. In photographs, piles of hands appear almost cataloged, lined up to erase the individuality of those mutilated. What makes these photographs especially unsettling is how carefully they were staged. The focus wasn't the anguish of the child or the silent dead. The intent was to validate the overseers, to display enforcement of quotas. The camera became a clerk's instrument, where suffering was processed into neat evidence. The result is not only a picture of horror, it is a document of power, proof that terror itself could be recorded, filed, and justified as routine order. Number 2. Colonial executions in Kenya. This image captures men bound at the gallows, their bodies framed as if part of a normal trial. Yet justice here was not neutral. It was scripted by a colonial power, claiming authority it never earned. The men stood as examples, positioned as warnings to all who might resist. During the Mau Mau uprising, the lens became a witness, not to truth, but to empire's theater. Photographs of executions and trials were circulated with precision. Officials presented them as signs of order restored, as if death was tidy proof that the empire held control. The reality behind the frame, dispossession, land seizures, and prison camps, was cut away. Detainees were given the label of terrorist and rebel, erasing their fight for land and dignity. For viewers far from Kenya, the captions and imagery created one story only: that the empire was fighting savagery with reason. In these photographs, state violence was reshaped into spectacle. The power lay not just in gallows or rope, but in how the picture itself transformed defiance into criminality, displayed for all to accept. Number 3. Australian Aboriginal human zoos. This image captures a crowd pressed against railings, staring into a staged village where Aboriginal men, women, and children were arranged as if part of a living display. The fairground setting gave it the air of a circus. What the visitors saw as entertainment was in fact a public spectacle of domination, with real people treated as props on a stage. Participants were denied choice. Families were uprooted and placed in artificial environments designed to highlight so-called primitiveness. Photography turned these moments into permanent records, framing indigenous lives as exotic curiosities. The lens froze their existence in ways that exaggerated difference while denying shared humanity. The exhibitions pushed a dangerous idea that some groups stood outside the category of full personhood. Accounts from the era even suggested Aboriginal people were not legally recognized as humans in the same sense until long after these shows had closed. These photographs reveal not only faces in a crowd, but a system that transformed people into objects, affirming empire's claim to superiority. They endure as proof that citizenship was replaced by spectacle. Number 4. The Bengal famine. This image captures a skeletal child lying on a Calcutta street, the body framed against stone walls and dust. The photo rests in British archives, labeled as if it were a simple local tragedy, stripped of any wider explanation. To the camera, it looked like nature had struck mercilessly, a famine without cause, beyond bad harvests, or fate itself. But the disaster was not only crop failure. Grain was redirected away from Bengal, prioritized for war efforts and for imperial supply lines. Scarcity was worsened by policy, and hunger swelled into starvation. The camera, however, did not frame ships or warehouses. It isolated the child, the ribs, the hollow eyes, suggesting an unavoidable calamity rather than choices made above. These haunting photographs spread widely, circulated as stark warnings or curiosities. Yet commentary on who controlled food stocks or why relief failed to arrive rarely accompanied the images. Viewers saw suffering, but not responsibility. The silence inside those pictures is just as haunting as the thin limbs. It disguises man-made famine as an act of fate. Number 5. Boer War concentration camps. This image captures rows of white tents under an open South African sky, arranged neatly as if part of an orderly settlement. The photographs present a calm surface, but inside those canvas walls, tens of thousands faced starvation and disease. What looked like a clean encampment was in reality a site of mass suffering. British authorities chose their images carefully. They framed the camps as humanitarian projects, places where Boer civilians were housed with care. Viewers abroad saw tidy camps, straight lines of tents, and children gathered as if safe. But these staged visions hid the harsh realities that daily defined life inside. Mortality among children soared, with illness spreading rapidly in overcrowded spaces. Reports described conditions of neglect, but those accounts were overshadowed by photographs that suggested order and sanitation. What came across in official albums was efficiency, not deprivation. The deception mattered. For audiences at home, these images built confidence in the empire's conduct. Abroad, they buried the cruelty of confinement beneath a thin veil of cleanliness. Number 6. Opium dens in colonial China. This image captures a dimly lit room where men lean against wooden beds, smoke curling into the shadows. European photographers framed these interiors as proof of moral collapse, as if the nation itself had sunk into weakness. To the viewer, the den appeared not just as a room, but as a symbol of decay. What lingers outside the frame tells another story. These photos did not show the bustling streets, the families, or the traders moving with purpose. They showed only one corner, chosen to exaggerate despair. The composition suggested filth and hopelessness, serving a message that suited a colonial narrative. Such images did more than document. They argued. They implied that China's people lacked discipline, that outside powers were right to intervene. Yet the photographs ignored who had driven opium into these markets. The wars and trade agreements that forced the drug into circulation remained unpictured. Through this manipulation, imperial crime was reformulated as Chinese frailty. The haunting portraits shifted blame, assigning the burden of shame to the colonized themselves. Number 7. Exhibitions of African tribes in Europe. This image captures African men and women standing inside model huts at European fairs, while crowds study them from a distance. The scene looks staged because it was. Cameras recorded these moments as though they were authentic glimpses of tribal life, yet the setting was a theater, with spectators acting like judges. The displays exaggerated difference. Europeans saw mud huts when they expected progress, beadwork when they wanted contrast, and songs or dances presented as proof of what they called primitivism. In this controlled space, audiences were invited to measure themselves against the performers and declare their own culture the peak of human progress. When the shutter clicked, performance became record. These photographs froze an exhibition into something that seemed scientific and undeniable. They were used as visual evidence of hierarchy, reinforcing the myth that some societies stood lower on a scale of civilization. Participants did not simply volunteer. Accounts described coercion, misrepresentation, and degrading conditions backstage. The resulting photographs are not ethnography at all. They are records of cultural kidnapping, disguised as education, and they survive as disturbing stereotypes preserved for empire. Number 8. Colonial military punishments. This image captures a man tied to a whipping post, soldiers standing nearby as if on guard. The photo looks procedural, but its purpose was never private record. It was made to show authority in action, the body held in place as a spectacle for others to witness. Colonial punishments were staged events. Stocks, floggings, and forced labor were not hidden, but displayed in ways that disciplined entire communities. The lens reinforced that message. By photographing the punishment, officials created a tool that carried the lesson far beyond the moment, spreading fear like a shadow across villages and settlements. The style of these photos is striking. Subjects are rigid, soldiers steady. The scene arranged with the same cold precision used for trophies or inventory. The cruelty was presented as order, the suffering transformed into evidence of obedience imposed. What remains disturbing is not only the violence itself, it is how the images stripped away humanity, turning public pain into a message of control, where law became secondary to command. The camera froze empire's violence in a way words alone could not. What survives today are haunting images, held in albums, archives, and museums, still echoing with the power they once carried. Every frame shows not forgotten customs, but decisions made to strip people of dignity, positioning humiliation as order. To look at them now is to face complicity. These photographs do not only recall what happened, they reveal how carefully oppression was staged. They remind us that domination relied on spectacle, and that even today the images carry echoes of command. Be sure to subscribe for more.